You do a sound check.
I may believe you're doing a sound check while we're talking.
Hello, welcome to Taxpayer Alert. This evening we have our guest Steve Fairchild, who's former president of the Calaveras County Chamber of Commerce and then one of the founders of the Visitors Bureau. He's probably one of the most successful businessmen in the county and brings lots of people in from all over the world to his Moaning Caverns resort. And those billboards you see over the county with the zip line, well, he's responsible for that. So they're nice billboards, so you don't give him a bad time. Now, Steve is also an expert on a number of things, including government affairs, and he's also looked at a current controversy we have going on with FEMA flood insurance. So we'll have to ask Steve to tell us a little bit more about himself. Steve, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Tell us what you're doing now.
Well, what am I doing now?
Yeah, well, besides fixing the lights in your caverns.
Well, of course, I purchased a tabletop mountain across from Moaning Cavern. We're doing things there which are related to mine history and tours and things like that, and people can come and also do bicycle riding and horseback riding and all of a manner of things that are on the list of possibilities. So it keeps me pretty busy.
I don't know how you can
Anything
do
to
it
be
all.
a lot of fun is what I want to do, you know.
Well, now on the FEMA thing, a little background. Back in 1968, the federal government passed an act called the Flood Insurance Act. It gave a tremendous amount of power to the federal government to almost be in the insurance business. And what has happened is that they went $20 billion in the hole with by writing policies that were not risk oriented. In other words, the premiums were so low, no way could the premiums cover the risk of floods. When you build a home in a floodplain, there's a good chance you're going to have a flood. And so what happened, that's where the Katrina and some other major disasters caused that. And then FEMA apparently found a way to make up for this by forcing people to have policies where there is no risk, where people don't want the policy, they don't need it, but they're required to do it through if they want to have a loan with insured by the federal government, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. So the plot thickens, and it's been getting worse and worse. In our county, we had 2,200 parcels that were formerly considered in a flood zone. Not very much. Our county is mostly mountainous. We're not really a big flood county. And then there was a change in the maps requested by FEMA. That change raised the number of parcels from 2,200 to 7,200. 5,000 more. And it's believed that many of these are not really subject to floods at all. And so it's been a tremendous struggle with people that they couldn't even sell their property. They had an escrow fall through. And we're at a point now where our group, the Taxpayer Association, has formed a FEMA committee, and we're hoping to be able to bring about change through Congressman McClintock's office, who's our federal representative. And also we've been in contact with the local politicians. But let's talk about the background on this a little bit more. Steve, what do you see, do you think that FEMA can come off of its present policies of requiring policies from people that really don't need it?
Well, yes, and in that they are public servants and supposedly through the proper channels and with the involvement of Congress or the Senate or whoever, they can be re-steered. The basic problem starts out, of course, that most loans that are made on properties are loaned through banks.
Right.
And the banks are insured by the federal government.
Yeah.
And so they feel that the federal government and the taxpayers are at risk if buildings are damaged in a flood, and that ruins the mortgage. So there's some basis to it, which is reasonable.
Right.
Government doesn't always do things in a reasonable way. What FEMA did is, from what I understand, is they used topographical maps to show any parcel that had any portion of it that might possibly be flooded. And they even talked about standing water, not necessarily creeks and stuff, just water running off of a hill on a flat surface. So they went way too far with it. They have been told, and apparently, at least mouth service, that they should back off a little bit and let the counties decide which portions or which parcels actually have buildings at risk.
Right.
And that will be a big change. It hasn't happened yet. It may not happen, but right now that's the direction they're going. Probably because they're getting pressure from not just us, from everybody in the West mostly. And so it is possible that they're going to dump it all back on the counties and say the counties should determine which of these lots that they have determined are flood prone actually have buildings that are at risk. If the buildings are not at risk, then the banks should be able to finance them and people should have no trouble. Meanwhile, we're in this government fog while they try and decide, who's going to end up paying the money, basically. But it does make sense that, if I were backing a bank, if I were an investor in a bank, and they were loaning money on people's houses, and I found they were in floodplains and not insured, I would be upset. So you can see it works both ways. But right now in the government fog, with organizations like taxpayers associations and political active people, we'll probably get this one straightened out because it seems fairly straightforward. If anything in government is ever straightforward.
Well, it seems nonpartisan as well.
It should be.
Yeah.
It should be. But I'm 75 years old. I've seen government do a lot of stupid things that are obviously wrong.
Yeah.
And then some things that are really good. So,
I have to find out what you eat. I'm 73, and I really feel my 73. And you run around everywhere, and I just can't understand where you get your energy.
Rocks, I don't know.
Now, currently the Calaveras Enterprise, the newspaper, our local newspaper, has been doing a pretty good job featuring articles and several editorials.
Good newspaper.
Yeah. Yes, they're really doing a good job on this. And I understand just today that they're coming out with another up-to-date article that will talk a little bit about some recent concessions that FEMA apparently is making or proposing. And so we're looking forward to see that from the local paper. Unfortunately, we don't have that information with us now, so we can't really discuss it because we don't know anything.
I checked it on the web. I didn't find it on the website. So
they haven't published it yet. It might come out maybe.
But I think that may be what we were talking about, is that FEMA's kind of dumping a lot of the responsibility back onto the counties, which means the county will have to spend the money to survey those properties.
That's going to be difficult.
So if you've got a slope like this and your house is here and the floodplain is here, or the flood level, even though it's on your property, you should be okay. That altitude difference is going to have to be surveyed by somebody. And so it's not going to be magic wand stuff by any means.
Apparently, what's required depends on which government official you're talking with FEMA. Now, apparently, I had a report from a lender who had 3 maybe more, at least 3 flood map adjustments for her clients, so they could get the loans. On at least one of them, they went ahead and got the insurance, but they were refunded once the map was updated. Now these were individual people; it wasn't a subdivision or anything. And they, on one of them, they took a 6-foot ladder, took a picture of the stream bed and the home with the 6-foot ladder there, so that they could see by comparison
scale, yeah.
that there's scale, and they submitted their application with that picture of the 6-foot ladder through this one representative who apparently is very property rights friendly, and was able to get their insurance turned around. Now that may not be typical of all that's happening, because we're getting a lot of complaints from other people that are not like that at all.
Well, in addition to that, there is a conflict of interest to some extent. I believe banks get a commission on the insurance that they require.
Yes.
So you buy the insurance, and I believe, like an insurance agent, they get a commission. They may waive that, they may not do that, but I think I've heard that they do. I can't, so that would make sense. And they say, well, look, according to FEMA, you need to have this insurance, and we're going to sell you this insurance through the part of your loan package. And oh, by the way, they take their percentage out of that loan package.
Yeah.
Fine print in the loan package, possibly. There's a lot of room for anytime anything gets complicated, there's room for corruption and greed and all those things. And sometimes it's just some banks aren't doing well good, and they kind of think they maybe need that money to stay in business too. We wouldn't want our banks to go out of business. So it's a complicated thing.
I wonder if the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac regulations are part of the problem in requiring the flood insurance.
Well, they would be, yeah. That's the federal end of it, and that is, the federal government does not want to insure houses and buildings that are floodable.
Right. They don't want.
And as a taxpayer, I would not want them to do that.
Yeah, I don't blame. I can't blame them.
Don't use my tax money to insure houses that are going to flood next week. Please.
Incidentally, on the commission setup, I went on the FEMA site, and they do. They explain a lot of the things that they're doing, and I heard reports of 30% commissions going to the insurance companies, but what I saw on the website was 10% commission plus 5% if they write a policy that has premiums above $2,000. So that's really an incentive to have a high premium, I guess. But in any case, well, the hopefully with good communication with the local newspaper, we're doing a good job of reporting on this, and the taxpayer groups, and also some other groups too that are interested. We have a committee formed, and we have some very knowledgeable people, and it doesn't include I have so many other things I'm doing. I just can't keep in touch with everything, but I'm very hopeful that we might see some serious changes in FEMA. Incidentally, about FEMA, there's no place in the Constitution that I could find where the federal government has authority to be in the insurance business. Apparently, the Supreme Court had the same opinion when Social Security was first enacted. They called it Social Security insurance. Yeah. And the word insurance went right up, there was a complaint about that, and it went right up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, it's a tax, it's not insurance. Well, apparently, because there's another clause of the Constitution, I think it's the 16th Amendment, that allows the federal government to tax people without regard to census. In other words, the federal government has the power to tax people directly, and that's where the IRS gets its authority from, the 16th Amendment, I think. It's not in the 10th Amendment. So, I'm wondering if this gets to go any further, if the Supreme Court would simply say that you're not in the insurance business, that's a tax, that's not a premium. It'd be interesting to see. Yeah, and of course, I'm not a constitutional expert,
Yeah, as a hobby, I like to read legal briefs, as a matter of fact. Some people like magazines. I like legal briefs. I haven't run across, I ran across and read the stuff that went on when they brought the income tax in the first place. And no one thought it would be more than $1 or $2.
Right.
There's some real convoluted stuff in that. And I suspect, I haven't run across this yet. Probably a lot of convoluted stuff. The more convoluted it gets, the more they pull the wool down, so to speak. But that'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure where to go with that. It's
interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. The government, when they've got the firepower.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's standing between us and totalitarian is our citizens.
Right.
Organizations such as the one you head up and others like that, their job is to try and get the public in focused and sort of kind of like the tea parties of the. There was not just one tea party; they were all over the place.
Right.
Boston was famous because of the Indian makeup and stuff, but they were tea parties going constantly, and that was the whole idea. Is the citizens discovered that they were being screwed.
Yeah. Well, that's
with no representation at all.
Yeah.
And that was what it was all about. No representation, and we're paying all this money. And it was public that does it. And that's, of course, what we need to do here.
Is
Let
awareness.
the public at least do that.
Yeah.
Because it depends, it affects them, but it also affects their future, their children and their grandchildren.
Right.
And they have to live with the mistakes made today.
Yes.
So,
Like the $18 trillion deficit. How our children can get out of that? And
printing presses, I guess.
It's so mind numbing that we almost want to forget about it because we see no solution, and it's not even discussed. Almost not at all.
Yeah, with inflation, you'll be $1 trillion candy bar someday. Just let it go long enough.
Yeah.
Economies are a very strange thing. It isn't a matter of money. It's a matter of really wealth. It's stuff. It's land. It's people, what you own. It's the rights to do things that are attached to your land or whatever. That's what real wealth is. And money is like the lubricant that just kind of keeps it flowing when you can trade from one to another. That's why they don't print trillions and trillions of dollars, actually, or billions, because all they need is just enough. That's what the individual banks do. They control the cash flow to keep the economy going. But the real economy is stuff.
Right.
And unfortunately, the taxes, they can take the money away from you, and you can lose your property if you don't. So it's complicated stuff. But the citizens are absolutely, it's imperative that they stay active, that they pay attention. Don't just let somebody else take care of it.
Yeah, I'm so grateful we live in a free country. It's
so far.
Yeah, and we have to keep it that way.
Yeah.
So so with FEMA, there may be some constitutional questions involved. That what is the extent of the powers that the federal government really didn't have according to the Constitution? I don't think that question's been raised before. But since it affects so many people in our county, maybe as much as thousands of people, affects their property rights. It can stop them from selling their property, and then if they're required to do all the surveying that FEMA was asking them to do with the expense,
which FEMA now says is the responsibility of the counties.
That could be, because that's not even firmed up itself yet. We'll see in the next issue of the Enterprise, perhaps, or maybe we'll get something from Congressman McClintock's office, which would probably might be better. Well, one of the things that I just love about this county is we have so much so much incredible amount of land and parcels that people can build, they can do so many things with. And to have something like this come up and just crush their hopes and dreams, and where they couldn't build their home because of the mountain of paperwork or the cost involved with it, it just brings tears to your eyes.
Well, that speaks to the whole thing, though, of what is wealth, and part of it is land.
Right.
And then we get this, you get, at one time you came west, you filed a mining claim or a logging claim or something, and then later on it was patented. Once it's patented, it becomes private property, which is wealth.
Right.
But the only thing the wealth is really, what can you do on that property or with that property?
Right.
Can you mine for gold, or can you grow food, or can you build houses, subdivide? What can you do on your property determines the value. It's like money.
Yeah.
And the whole general plan thing,
Right.
basically it says, no, you can't do whatever you want on your property unless we say so. It's a whole switch. Basically, it's like, we're going to, just pull the rug right out from under you, but oh, by the way, we'll let you do some things. And that battle has been going on for the next, 30, 40 years. It kind of, I think, started in Europe primarily, and they decided that, because in Europe, private property is really rare. I travel a lot in the cave business. There are cave operators all over the world, and we talk with each other, and it's an organization. Everybody has organizations, and that International Show Caves Association. And the first one I went to, we had this big feast, essentially, or dinner, or whatever, banquet. All these different languages. It was really great because we could chat. One person could speak Spanish, another German, but you could get it going. And when I mentioned that I owned caves in California, they corrected me, because you can't own a cave. In fact, you can't own anything in Europe.
Oh,
So, well, you can maybe things you left to you by your grandparents, your saucers and dishes and things, but houses and things you really don't own. And they kept, I had to keep telling them, and they said, you can't own land. That's the concept
Now,
in Europe.
Is that true
You
in
cannot
Switzerland too?
In general, there are little pockets where you can, but mostly no. The land really belongs to the people, the government, essentially.
Right.
And they said, how can you own a cave? And I said, well, if I have a piece of property and there's a hole in the property, it's my hole.
Right.
And they all kind of laughed off and laughed about that. But the whole concept of actually being able to have free to own your own land, and in caves and whatever the heck else, it's just foreign to them. They are, and I've been China, Korea, all over the place. We're the only place left on the planet, as far as I know, or certainly the major area, where we claim ownership to our property. That means that we can do what we want on it, as long as there's not some reason not to do it.
Right.
That's what's called zoning, even.
Right.
Okay. But now with the general plan, it works the other way around. You cannot do anything on your property unless they've already predetermined it can be done on that property.
Now, in the general plan, we're going
And
to
I
have
fought
another,
that thing 30 years ago with Tommy Taylor and the rest.
we're going to have another session on the general plan, and we'll be discussing the general plan update, and we'll be talking about some of the proposals that we know about, and it will be very interesting. So, you want to see the next segment of Taxpayer Alert for our discussion on the general plan. Now, topic of this one is FEMA, and it's kind of difficult for
Government control.
and we have the same thing, government control. What did we do about it? And above all else, like our doctor friends say, do no harm. And so we want to bring about a better tomorrow. We believe in limited government. We believe in constitutional government. But we need to proceed in such a way that we're not doing any harm. And And so with the FEMA insurance thing, we want to protect the people that are being harmed. We're not sure exactly how to do it. We don't know if there's constitutional issues involved or not, frankly. And we, so as our association, we just try to get the latest information we can and disseminate it to as many people as we can. We've purchased the county roll, the tax assessor's roll, and we are prepared. We do have a list of the assessor's parcel numbers of those 7,200 people that FEMA says are subject to their control. And so we're not mailing out to those people yet. We know that FEMA has not contacted those people, and we know the county has not contacted those people. That leaves the only other person that could, or group that could help, would be the Taxpayer Association, and we're prepared to do that. We could send postcards at a cost of 50 cents a piece, and we have to get some donations for it. But we can contact every one of those people that have the FEMA assessor's parcel number, and let them know what's happening, and let them know who to contact to get it corrected. That could be very powerful, but that's one of the things that we don't want to do right now, because it would tend to cloud the issue. It seems to be proceeding in a way that FEMA is considering being more reasonable. And if that turns out to be true, then we don't have to do a major petition drive or anything else. But we're prepared to do it if we have to.
Well, the problem I see, though, is that resurveying can be expensive.
Yes.
And if it's the responsibility of the county to do that, that brings a whole nother problem we might have to deal with. So.
Yeah, the county.
Somebody's going to have to pay for those surveys.
Yeah, and the county's been spending more money than it's been taking in, and they've done they have a wage a COLA increase in their benefits of 4%. And
even though the inflation hasn't gone up 4%.
Yeah, no, and apparently. What's happening with that is the county negotiates with the representatives for the unions on the different classification of workers. Mm-hmm. And even though the county board of supervisors doesn't personally negotiate, they hire a negotiator to negotiate for them. And I had one supervisor say that means that they're not responsible. Actually, they are responsible, because they approve what the negotiators come up with. Mm-hmm. And so they approved that 4% increase, and since their wages are attached to the labor agreements, they get the 4% as well. Now that gives the
conflict of interest.
Yeah, it gives the appearance of conflict of interest, even though they may not be aware or may not intend to do that. So one of the things that our taxpayer group is asking the question: is there a better way to set supervisor salaries rather than attach it to labor agreements, of which they are responsible for, helping to bring about?
It's hard. Being a free enterpriser, I almost think that when they're running for election, the salary should be set while they're running. Whoever's asking for the lowest salary, we vote for, right?
Well, yeah.
That would be free enterprise, wouldn't it?
We want to thank you for watching our program, and look forward to you coming back again.